some big breaking news coming in from that GST Council meeting that is underway in the capital right now. Sunil Prabhu monitoring that meeting, stepping out to bring us a big update. Sunil, what do you have?
Well, what we were expecting and the entire country was expecting is a reduction in the rates, GST rates for vaccines, which were proposed at 5%, as well as other COVID-related goods. There was no consensus. The government of India wanted it at 5%. There was some argument saying that, for example, soaps are being used by the masses, not sanitizers, so we should continue to keep it at 18%. Of course, opposition rule. Finance Minister said this is bad optics. We need to show to the world as well as to India that while we are fighting COVID, that the government is in resonance with them, that we need to have zero tax on this. And because there was no consensus, the Finance Minister has agreed to set up a group of ministers now to look at this entire issue and report back within 10 days. Who that group of ministers are has not yet been decided and not yet been notified. But we will get those details at a later stage. The other point was, of course, an attempt to substantially bring in ENA, which is related to alcohol, to bring alcohol and petroleum under the GST. That was ruled out. The state said that this is something that we have clearly made it clear that this is states need to have certain powers with them, and they will continue to do so. And on the crucial issue, which was supposed to be a game changer, the GST, that is assured, growth for states in terms of revenue, because there has been a shortfall. That matter debated for a long time, no consensus, will have to meet again. So clearly, what has happened after a marathon long meeting starting at 11 o'clock this morning, there has been no consensus and only a group of ministers to meet to decide how much will they be able to reduce taxes for the common man, for people like you and me who have to buy, for example, an oxygen concentrator or for that matter, any kind of COVID-related goods. They will have to defer and wait for a group of ministers to meet and then give a report back in 10 days, and then there will be some finality, hopefully.
Sunil Prabhu, could you clarify for the lay person what this means? This is the GST Council that is meeting after a gap of 8 months. 8 months during which we have been through a horrific pandemic where we have lost thousands of lives. We have just gotten through this even worse second wave where people have been complaining of shortage of oxygen, complaining of a lack of access to COVID medicines. After all that, the GST Council was aware of these issues as they went into this meeting. Even then, they have come out inconclusive with no decision. Is that correct?
That's right. It is inconclusive. It's sad, but this is the truth. The fact of the matter is that there has been no consensus. Opposition ruled states. I can speak with complete clarity because I've spoken to some of the opposition ruled finance ministers, and they made it clear that it just didn't give them good optics. The center was proposing 5% on the vaccines. They said, no way, we can't accept this at this stage. We want it at 0%. Whatever the input credit you want to do, 0.1, whatever you do, because it just doesn't look good to the common man that we are making taxes for something that will help to save a common man. So as you rightly said, right through a pandemic, we have seen the last GST meeting in October. They have seen this entire sea change of events, but yet the finance ministry and the bureaucrats who are part of this entire exercise have not been able to find a consensus among states, and we are back at a stalemate, and we will have to have a group of ministers who decide on this, and hopefully in the next 10 days there will be some clarity after that.
So Sunil, was there any decision made, because there was a lot on the table, you know, the Sikkim proposal to charge a COVID cess on pharma companies, whether the states were demanding an extension of the deadlines of various GST compliance. Was a decision made on any of the issues that were on the table?
Well, on the COVID cess, which they were wanting to increase, for example, a state like Sikkim had been wanting it for pharmaceutical and power. They have again referred it to a group of ministers, though there was a by and large consensus by all states that they should be allowed to go ahead with that proposal. Because if a state is losing in terms of revenue and they need to make case of a shortfall, then why can't they be able to do it? See, this GST is basically a mini parliament. With the powers now being given to the GST Council, they are really the ones who ultimately decide on how they will go ahead in terms of increasing taxes. And if a state has a shortfall, they must be given that leeway. So we will wait and see for that group of ministers. So really, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Sarah, but a lot of decisions were expected. But what we have been told is that only a group of ministers now will be meeting to finalize and hopefully give some consensus on these important issues.
All right, Sunil. So marathon meeting, as you put it, at the end of which no decisions taken. Thanks, Sunil, for that. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the numbers so far. While in the midst of this meeting taking place, the latest numbers came in after battling a brute second wave for weeks. Fresh COVID cases have come down. India recorded 1,86,364 new coronavirus cases in the last 24 hours. This is the lowest daily COVID count since the 14th of April. On Thursday, the government had said that the second COVID wave in India is on the downswing, and they hope that this trend will be sustained even when curbs are systematically relaxed. Meanwhile, the daily death toll, however, remains at over 3,000, with 3,660 deaths reported in the last 24 hours. However, the daily death toll has fallen below the 4,000 mark for the first time in 11 days. And 29,19,699 cases of the vaccine were administered in the last 24 hours. I mean, 29 lakh, above 29 lakh vaccines were administered in the last 24 hours. That is the highest number of vaccines administered per day since the 26th of April. But is that enough? Dr. V.K. Paul, who heads the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID-19, himself had said this week that India needs to prepare to vaccinate around 1 crore Indians a day. And today, the Congress MP Rahul Gandhi warned that India will be hit by multiple COVID waves unless we get our vaccine strategy right, leading the Environment Minister to declare that all of India will be vaccinated by the end of this year.
स्ट्रेटजी के बारे में मैंने डायरेक्टली प्रधानमंत्री को बोला कि अगर हिंदुस्तान ने वैक्सीन स्ट्रेटजी नहीं ठीक लगाई, एक बार नहीं अनेक बार लोग मरेंगे, क्योंकि वायरस अडेप्ट करता रहेगा। मगर ये जो सेकंड वेव है, ये प्रधानमंत्री की जिम्मेदारी है। प्रधानमंत्री ने जो नौटंकी की, प्रधानमंत्री ने जो अपनी जिम्मेदारी पूरी नहीं की, इसका कारण सेकंड वेव है।
भारत का वैक्सीनेशन 2021 में ही दिसंबर के पहले पूरा होगा। राहुल जी, अगर वैक्सीन की चिंता ही करते हो तो जरा अपने कांग्रेस के राज्यों में ध्यान दो, वहां वैक्सीनेशन में गड़बड़ हो रही है। उनको जो 1 मई से कोटा दिया गया है, 18 से 45 उम्र के लोगों के लिए उत्पादकों से 25% उनके लिए रिजर्व है, वो तो ले नहीं रहे।
And Mr. Javdekar's statement comes at a time when India is facing a shortage of COVID-19 vaccines, which has even led to disruptions in the nationwide inoculation program. And now today, Bharat Biotech clarified that the manufacturing to the supply of the COVID-19 vaccine, Covaxin, involves a 4-month lag time. This, of course, depends on technology and regulatory approvals. Thus, what this means is that the production batches of Covaxin that were initiated during March this year will be ready for supply only in the month of June. And Delhi will begin unlocking gradually from Monday, thanks to the efforts of 2 crore people of the city, which helped bring it under control, bring the second wave under control, the Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal said today. But he emphasized that the reopening will be slow and could be shelved if cases start to rise again.
ये समय है अब धीरे-धीरे अनलॉकिंग करने का।
Delhi will begin reopening, but only to sectors, construction and factories.
Active cases have come down to 16,378 from a peak of 1,03,424 a month ago. The average daily cases are at 1800, down from a peak of over 25,000 again a month ago. The average positivity rate is at 2.69%.
सोमवार को सुबह
The Chief Minister warned that the reopening will be stopped if cases rise again. 40-year-old construction worker Kundan Devi is hopeful that work will return for her and her children after the gradual reopening of the lockdown.
हो सकता है लॉकडाउन खुलेगा तो मजदूरी चलेगा तो बाल बच्चा काम करेगा, नहीं तो ऐसे जैसे चल रहा है वैसे चलते रहे। कमाना खाना तो यहाँ है, तो इसीलिए दिक्कत तो आ ही रहा है। जब काम ही नहीं होगा तो खाना कहाँ से होगा?
Meanwhile, the migrant workers have started returning to the national capital as well. The Delhi government is now preparing for a possible third wave.
The announcement of lockdown has provided certain respite, but there are a lot of issues that these people have been facing and struggling with the lockdowns, and that is why the government has said that to avoid any future waves and to avoid any rise in number of COVID cases, each and every person should contribute and follow COVID appropriate behavior so that the most downtrodden section of our society doesn't suffer more. With camera person Sushil Rathi, I'm Akshay Dongre for NDTV.
And the Supreme Court has come to the rescue of children orphaned during the past year. The Supreme Court has directed states to identify children who have lost parents or one breadwinner after March, after the lockdown last year, and identify which of them need protection. In less than 2 months of this deadly second COVID wave, at least 577 children have lost both parents. This is according to government data that has been released. Now, these children need help to cope and to move on. Some states have started to come forward and address this crisis.
Sharanya lost both her parents to COVID less than 2 weeks ago in East Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh. The 11-year-old has been handed over a fixed deposit bond of 10 lakh rupees by the district collector. 34 children who were orphaned by COVID have been identified so far by the Andhra Pradesh government, and 10 lakh rupees each has been deposited in their name.
తల్లి తండ్రి ఇద్దరు కూడా కోవిడ్లో వచ్చి చనిపోయిన ఘటనలు కూడా కొన్ని జరుగుతూ ఉన్నాయి. అది చూసినప్పుడు నాకు కూడా చాలా అంటే చాలా మనసు కష్టం అనిపించి వెంటనే ఆ పిల్లల కోసం, అటువంటి పిల్లల కోసం ఎవరైతే తల్లి తండ్రి ఇద్దరు కూడా కోల్పోయిన పిల్లలు ఎవరైతే ఉంటారో కోవిడ్ వల్ల, అటువంటి పిల్లల కోసం 10 లక్షల రూపాయలు ఫిక్స్డ్ డిపాజిట్ చేసి.
In less than 2 months of the deadly second COVID wave, at least 577 children have lost both parents, says the government.
In Delhi, 5,500 children have lost at least one parent, of which we have been able to trace 40 children who have lost both parents until as of yesterday. And I'm sure the numbers could be much higher.
Many children are reportedly suffering from anxiety and depression. The trauma is taking a mental toll, say experts.
तो ऐसे बच्चे जिनके माँ बाप इकट्ठे चले गए हैं और अनाथ हो गए हैं, तो ऐसे बच्चों के अंदर हम ज़्यादातर देखते हैं कि डिप्रेशन बहुत ज़्यादा ग्रो होता है, एंग्जाइटी बहुत ज़्यादा ग्रो होती है, चिंता, परेशानी, अवसाद.
In the deadly second wave of the coronavirus, most deaths to have taken place between the age of 30 to 50 age group leave behind minor children who had the financial and the emotional security of their parents and the homes. These children desperately need help and to learn how to cope up with these times ahead. With my colleague Uma Sudhir in Hyderabad and camera person Manoj Thakur and Sanjay Kaushik in Delhi, Shonakshi Chakravarti for NDTV.
And the Calcutta High Court on Friday granted interim bail to all the 4 Bengal politicians, including 2 ministers from Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress, who were arrested by the CBI in connection with the Narada bribery case. The bail was granted to them, citing the lockdown in West Bengal.
Dramatic arrests, immediate bail, a stay on bail, then house arrest. 10 days after this drama began, these 4 political heavyweights finally out on interim bail. Mamata Banerjee's ministers, Firhad Hakim and Shubhrato Mukherjee, her senior MLA, Madan Mitra, and Shobhan Chatterjee, who quit Trinamool, joined BJP and quit BJP again.
The court has accepted our plea and granted interim bail on the condition that 2 lakh rupees of bail bond to meet with the investigating officer as and when required, but through virtual mode because of seeing the pandemic situation. And thirdly, and the most importantly, to not to give any comments or press statements as far as this sub judice matter is concerned.
The Narda bribery case is a political powder keg. But now the Narda case is kicking up a storm in the judiciary as well. We have been reduced to a mockery, a sitting judge of Calcutta High Court has said. Justice Arindam Sinha wrote to fellow judges on 24th May objecting to the court's handling of the case, to the way CBI's plea for transfer of case was treated as a PIL, to a division bench hearing the plea instead of a single judge. In its petition, the CBI had cited a list of events on 17th May, the day of arrests. The CBI said it wanted the case transferred for fear of the mob. The court has questioned that. Can a mob influence a court's decision or CBI's actions? The issue is now being hotly debated in judicial circles. With Arvind Kejriwal and A. Vaidyanathan in Kolkata, Monideepa Banerjee, NDTV.
And now after Cyclone Yas, there's cyclone politics it seems. The BJP is now claiming that the West Bengal Chief Minister skipped a review meet chaired by the Prime Minister to assess the damage caused by Cyclone Yas. West Bengal's Chief Minister's office says that she did meet with the Prime Minister. Now the central government is accusing the West Bengal Chief Minister of keeping the Prime Minister and the Governor Jagdeep Dhankar waiting for half an hour. Let's go across to Monideepa Banerjee for more on this. Moni, some strong words being thrown about here. Callous, arrogant for the West Bengal Chief Minister. What's the real story?
Honestly, the real story is yet to emerge. There are very little, little details that are emerging. But, even the sequence of events is not exactly clear. But what we now know from sources in the West Bengal government is that the Mamata Banerjee herself was very upset that despite having an appointment with the Prime Minister, fixed apparently yesterday by her office, despite that, prior appointment, she was made to wait to meet the Prime Minister. That is one thing we are hearing. The second is that, her Chief Secretary and she finally did go and meet the Prime Minister and gave him the report that she wanted to submit to him, and she left. She has said categorically with permission of the Prime Minister because she had other meetings scheduled. Now all this was something apparently the Prime Minister's office knew, and yet she was made to wait. And so that is the version of the West Bengal government. The centre's version, very, very different. As you mentioned, they have called her arrogant, petulant, and her behavior unbecoming of a chief minister, especially when it came to dealing with two constitutional authorities, the Prime Minister and the Governor who was present. The Governor has said that there was trouble at the meeting in his tweets.
Monideepa Banerjee, this is not the last that we've heard on this matter. We will, of course, you'll bring us more updates the moment you have it. Thanks for now. Meanwhile, the hearing has begun in the Dominica High Court on Mehul Choksi's habeas corpus plea after the deportation of the fugitive diamond jeweler who was arrested in the Caribbean island nation while trying to escape to Cuba from Antigua, where he's been living since 2018, was put on hold. The Antiguan Prime Minister had asked Dominica to send him back to India directly, but this has been contested by his lawyers who claim that the wanted businessman cannot be sent to India as he's no longer a citizen of India. Meanwhile, his lawyers are claiming that he was abducted and taken to Dominica.
The most recent picture of fugitive diamond merchant Mehul Choksi in custody of the Dominica police. His legal team in Dominica alleges that the 62-year-old was forcibly abducted by Indian officials and taken to Dominica from Antigua, and that he was not fleeing.
He had several bruises about his body. His eyes was seriously swollen. He tells me that he had been abducted on Sunday at around 5:30 thereabout in Jolly Harbour. He says that he was on his way to have dinner with an individual, and persons who he identified based upon the sound of their voice as Indian and Antiguan police officers.
A habeas corpus petition was filed to produce him in court, based on which his repatriation has been stayed. Chokshi is wanted in connection with the 14,000 crore PNB scam by both the Enforcement Directorate and the CBI.
लीगल असिस्टेंस या लीगल रिप्रेजेंटेशन का राइट नहीं दिया जा रहा था, उनको कोर्ट में नहीं पेश किया गया था, तो फिर इमीडिएटली इसलिए वो कोर्ट में हैबियस कॉर्पस की पिटीशन मूव की गई। अब उसके अंदर कोर्ट ने ऑर्डर कर दिया है कि मिस्टर मेहुल चोकसी का एफिडेविट फाइल होगा।
NDTV has learned that after Antiguan PM stated that Chokshi should be handed back to India directly by Dominica, India is using its diplomatic relations with Dominica to stress on their case against Chokshi. Interestingly, India has managed to get more offenders deported back home rather than extradited. The matter is listed for later. It's not clear if India would be represented in court. Incidentally, India recently refreshed its diplomatic ties with Dominica, sending a grant of COVID vaccines as part of its vaccine diplomacy. With Neeta Sharma in New Delhi, Bureau Report, NDTV.
And time now for a market roundup. The Sensex gained 308 points while the Nifty hit fresh record highs at the closing bell. The broader NSE Nifty 50 was trading at 15,435, gaining 97 points. The 30-share BSE Sensex was trading at 51,422 after gaining 307 points. According to experts, the sentiment is boosted by a decline in daily COVID cases and positive cues from the global market and gains in the index heavyweights, Reliance Industries, HDFC Twins and Kotak Bank. And in a deal that pits India's largest conglomerate against the entrenched e-commerce players in India, the Tata Group has acquired a majority stake in the Alibaba-backed online grocery seller Big Basket. The deal comes as e-commerce sales, especially for food and groceries, have accelerated in India as the COVID-19 pandemic spurred a big shift to online shopping.